Welcome to the Star Trek Set Chat and Pack Crack video series. Today we're going to be talking about the Borg expansion. Came out in September 2001, consisted of 143 cards, 42 common, 40 uncommon, 21 rare, 39 rare plus, and again, an ultra rare. Johannes, can you tell us a little bit about what the Borg did for the game?
Absolutely. So this set is the addition to the Voyager expansion, as we said, was kind of a new starting point for the game. And this really just fleshes out this theme. We get 2 new affiliations. The Borg were already present in the game, and you can mix those Voyager Borg with the First Contact Borg that we have seen a few years before. But we also have an entirely new affiliation in the Delta Quadrant, and that is the Hirogen, who, much like the Kazon and Vidians, suffer from a lack of source material. So we have a few very strong characters that put all the Enterprise crew to shame. And apart from these, we have a couple of smaller factions. We have exclusively non-aligned versions of certain marquee characters like B'Elanna and Captain Chakotay in their pre-Delta Quadrant versions, if you will. And we also have the Klingons who were stranded in the Delta Quadrant or relocated somewhere. And it also continues the theme that we've seen in the Voyager expansion, that the power level or this the pace of the game is accelerated even more, and I'll talk about that later on when we talk about cards that we want to see in the pack.
A lot of what we're looking at in this set is very, very similar to what we saw in Voyager. We've got 1 ultra rare back to Federation this time around. And we've got a set of dual affiliation rare pluses. So you're seeing, again, that same rarity with your or almost the same rarity with your ultra rare as you are with your dual affiliation rares. We're seeing the we do get a couple of my favorite cards in this set. I absolutely love the Prometheus. We get to see that one in both its Federation incarnation and it's taken over by the Romulans incarnation. We had the Romulans who did that takeover in the previous set. And so it's a lot of the same things we were seeing in Voyager. We talked a little bit about this before, and it's kind of the third of the Voyager set, if it was to be compared to Premiere.
And when it comes to this ultra rare, in our previous Voyager episode, Michael, you asked about the Pandari champion and whether he was very powerful and had to have been adjusted as with previous ultra rares. In this case, we probably have one of the least powerful ultra rares, in that he's not a bad guard. He's got several good skills. His stats are okay, but his special ability is just to score 5 additional points for Federation missions. So not terrible, but not really a game changer, as in terms of, say, the ultra rare McCoy, that we've seen in a previous set. Although it's still good to open because of its rarity, its ultra rarity. As Dan mentioned, we once again have a long list of dual affiliation cards as well. These are the same type of dual affiliation where there is the multiple printing, and it continues that Voyager trend.
Let me ask you a gameplay question here. Dan, you mentioned that you would consider this the third of the Voyager set, which I think nicely kind of just conceptually kind of shows me or kind of demonstrates what the set is quite nicely. Johannes, if we were to open or just have maybe 10, 12, I don't know, maybe a box of Borg boosters, could we open them up and play a game, or would we need some of the Voyager cards to really make good decks?
I mean, if we use the Borg expansion exclusively?
Right. Would we need some of the Voyager set cards, or could we kind of play with these Borg cards on their own?
We could probably play a match of Borg against Hirogen, but Star Trek always suffers from the fact that you don't get reprints of essential cards like outposts and reporting locations in the new expansions. So that means we wouldn't get our reporting locations where we could play the Voyager personnel or the Kazon and Vidians. But if we open enough, we could probably build a non-aligned Hirogen deck and probably also a working Borg deck. So that would work.
And if we were going to pull some nice cards that we could play with from this pack, what would you like us to open?
Well, the Hirogen are a very good base affiliation in that they have a lot of very powerful personnel and a lot of very powerful ships. And they were naturally an affiliation that you could pair with one of the Vidian or Kazon cards. So those are universal treaties that allow them to mix with any affiliation. So you would often have Vidians or Kazons plus Hirogen plus the non-aligned part of the Delta Quadrant Federation cards. As we mentioned last time, we had a lot of Federation non-aligned duels. So you'd often find Kazon plus Vidian plus all those guys like Seven of Nine and Chakotay in their non-aligned mode. And a card that I would like to see is actually a common here, and that is Hirogen Hunt. What this does is, in place of a card draw, you may download certain cards or any Hirogen ship. And this is super powerful. For just a card draw, you can get a ship into play. And if you set up your deck correctly, you will find ways to draw several cards on your first turn, meaning with this card alone, you could potentially drop 3 ships on your first turn. You still wouldn't have the personnel to staff them necessarily, but that just goes to show you how quickly you can build up an armada with these cards in that era of the game. If you look at a common Hirogen ship, the hunting vessel, it starts out at 779, 7 weapons, but the weapons increase for each other staffed ship you have. So if you churn out a couple of these, you then quickly have ships that have double-digit weapons, and you can mix all those aboard a Kazon warship, and then you just go to work. So those are the cards that, to me, show the fact that with these expansions, many people considered the game to go downhill compared to what we called the golden era, because now we enter the territory of destroying outposts on turn 1 sometimes, or damaging them on turn 1, destroying them on turn 2, and leaving the opponent nothing to play. So that's kind of disheartening.
So with the acceleration of the game and this just kind of like nuclear frenzy you're talking about with all these ships coming down on this armada, if I were to peek at a table of you, Geyserfest, some really good players playing official tournament sealed deck right now, and I were to see some Voyager and Borg cards, like what would I see? You know, is there a good instance of the strategy you just mentioned? Would I see some Federation from these sets? Would it be more Borg?
You mean in the official tournament format that is played at championships right now?
Exactly, right.
Borg you see every now and then. It's still a very complex affiliation, and the people who played are mostly veterans who have done this quite a lot. I myself am by no means a Borg expert, so I always have to follow what's going on the table very carefully myself. I'm by no means a Borg expert. Hirogen you see, but they're often used as the base part to combine them with something else. Most of the time, non-aligned holograms. That's a deck type that is quite popular. Since in official tournament format, a lot of those problematic Delta Quadrant cards have been nerfed. You don't see those Delta Quadrant affiliations as much anymore, and they are far away from the oppressive potential that they had during the unregulated Decipher era. So today, that's not much of an issue.
So if you kind of had a directive from someone to bring a Voyager or Borg deck with these cards to OTSD tournament, you said you're now by no means a Borg expert. A lot of these cards have been nerfed. What would you look at? Like, what kind of strategy would you think? Okay, this is what I'm going to start looking at or start working on to build a deck.
I'd go for straightforward Voyager and non-aligned. So that's what I would do. You have a good reporting engine in Home Away from Home. You have ways to seed a ship there often you go for the USS Equinox, but also the Voyager works just as well, because that is a very good solving deck. I probably wouldn't go for the Kazon, because with the state they're in now, they are not good at, or not as good anymore at shooting stuff out of the universe, and they've always been bad solvers if you can't pair them with a different affiliation that has the solving tools. And same is true for Vidians. They if you can't use their evil abilities, you just have a rather lackluster solving deck that doesn't really do what I would thematically want my Vidians to do. I don't want to play Vidians as a solving faction. I want them to do stuff where they interact with my opponent's personnel and steal a lung here or there.
Yeah, I often think it was probably a mistake trying to make all these separate Delta Quadrant factions, and it might have been more fun to have an overarching umbrella, maybe just the Delta faction, which had the Hirogen, the Vidians, and the Kazon mixing and matching to create a more interesting affiliation.
Even giving them all just a non-aligned faction might have been more fun too. Playing them into opportunistic, the Ferengi hire your Kazon to go and backstab the Voyager crew or something. It would have felt more consistent with how Voyager treated them throughout the show too.
Johannes, any other cards that you would want to open, or did you cover those pretty comprehensively?
There are a lot of good cards. For example, all the Hirogen alphas are very good, very skill heavy, very good attributes. So those are always good to have. If you go for Borg, there are a lot of Borg that you want in your deck. There's first. There is 4 of 9. Those have all good abilities, but with most Borg decks, you probably want the entire toolbox. So there's no saying, oh, I've pulled this one Borg, I'm going to build a Borg deck around him. You'd want the entire faction ideally.
And how about from a collector perspective? What's good in the Borg?
From my perspective as a collector, I want all the dual affiliation cards for obvious reasons. They're rarer, they're hard to find, they're fun. You get your alternate persona of the Doctor from the Equinox. You get the Prometheus. You get the Equinox itself is, I believe, in this set, and the Dauntless was in the last one.
I think it's other way around.
Oh, it's the other way around. So Dauntless is in this one. Equinox was in the last one. You get the Susanna Thompson Borg Queen. So the alternate actor playing the Borg Queen in this one. And I have a personal favorite. I really, really have loved my interactions with Vaughn Armstrong. And he's on about 7 or 8 different cards, including both Deckeren and 2 of 9, which are rares in 2 totally different factions.
I'm going to echo almost all of that. Reginald Barclay would still be the best pull, not because he's great, but just because of rarity. Definitely the next in line would be the USF Prometheus, which is dual affiliation Federation Romulan. And I really enjoyed having a dual Romulan affiliation card, which is not something we'd seen as much here. Other dual affiliations, we have Icheb, who is Federation non-aligned, Hajur, who is Hirogen and non-aligned, Rebi and Azan, that's not of those 2 characters, 1 card, Federation non-aligned, Mazzotti, Federation non-aligned, Marika, Federation non-aligned, Riley Frazier, Federation non-aligned, Equinox Doctor, Federation non-aligned, and thankfully, to break that streak, Oram, who is Romulan and non-aligned. Of the non-dual affiliation cards, Borg Queen, certainly 7 of 9 in Borg form, as opposed to the dual affiliation 7 of 9 in Voyager. The Unicomplex being the sort of special location for the Borg, and the Federation card Deanna Troi, who goes some way to addressing the first contact staffing icon issue. There are other cards that do that, but her presence allows the first contact bridge crew, who have the communicator logo staffing icon, to count as a standard command icon for staffing of ships. There are some uncommons of value, specifically Kazon Fighter, because of the shenanigans you could do with that, and also the Borg Cube. We had a Borg Cube in First Contact, but here we have another Borg Cube just because they're very powerful. And then on the common front, you have the hunting vessel that Johannes mentioned. You have some of the gateway and objective combos that we also saw in First Contact, such as Trans-Warp Network Gateway and Established Gateway. And we do have a few more common dual affiliation cards, such as Angelo Tassani and the Hirogen card, who perished the Hanonian land deal, which was famous in the Voyager expansion as a good dilemma. So any of those would be good.
And is the Borg Queen functionally, I guess, or just the exact same version as the First Contact Borg Queen?
No, she's a little different.
Okay.
I was just thinking of another card that I'd like to see, and that is the futuristic Borg drone 1, because he has very interesting skills. He can he basically allows you to skill share, and there is a neat way to download him, but I think that is only introduced in the Holodeck Adventures set. And another Borg of interest is Mazzotti, that was just mentioned, because she allows Borg to, or she allows you to unstop Borg present. And with this set, we now have quite a good supply of non-aligned Borg personnel that you can include with other decks. So you can build dedicated decks where you just have your guys attempt a mission, let them be stopped, and then little Mazzotti says, have another go and see if you can solve it this time.
Okay, here's our pack, and I think we're locked into 11 card expansions for the rest of the way here. 11 cards. Here we go with Borg, and it's just so interesting. Now, I really don't know many of these cards at all because I was playing the early sets. Opening a Jean-Luc Picard or Data was so like you open the card. Now there's almost 2 every good card in these expansions, which is just so interesting. Saying, oh, which 7 of 9 did you open? So different from the mindset of the original cards. But here we go. Here's our Borg pack.
I don't think there are any rare missions this time.
Just about to ask. Tommy read my mind. Your mind reader. All right. Back to the video. Can't open this one. We have our common. Okay. Pretty good with the uncommon. Uncommon mission, not a rare mission.
Another skill monster Vidian.
We have 1 uncommon. I believe the 4th is the rare. Maybe I'm mistaken. It is, what is this, Hirogen?
Yep. Car. Nope. Attack.
Is this one of the alphas you mentioned, Johannes? Oh, it says alpha. Impatient
Yep.
Alpha Hirogen. Okay.
Yeah. And remember, with Delta Quadrant Spatial Scission, that means you can actually have an additional copy of this guy in play. So what's not to like? 7 cunning, 10 strength, and 5 good skills. There's nothing like acquisition or greed or law that are only edge cases when you need them against dilemmas, but those are actually properly useful skills.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a rare plus. Is that correct? I think the Hirogen are distributed between rare and rare plus in this set, so he's one of the better ones.
I can look it up. Let's see. NETAC. Hirogen. Ooh. Rare plus. You're right.
Cool.
All right, we got a rare plus. Yeah, I don't know if I would have made it in the Delta Quadrant. Look at that strength. Look at those skills. Wow. Smart, fast, strong. Yeah.
Typically, the rare plus Hirogens do sell. Just the regular rare Hirogens stick around for a long time.
Yeah, this card looks strong. Didn't we already see?
Yes, we did.
Look at this. Okay, Yep, here we are. Another double
Which
pack.
means there's a good chance that's Hunt Alien right behind it.
Wow. Dan, you're all over this. Look at this pack. Okay, everyone, here we go.
Yep.
These aren't shenanigans. This is real life. This is really happening.
So the front 3 and the back 7 were pulled from sheets from different parts in the sheet. So you would actually, or different hoppers. So in this case, you ended up in sync.
Jeez.
Which is great if you happen to need that card, but not actually all that great in the grand scheme of things.
This is insane. I mean, yeah.
Yep.
Here we are. Look at that.
Yep, 3 doubles in your 11 cards. So there's your Hirogen Hunt.
This is the card you mentioned, Johannes, right? The one you wanted to open?
That's right, yes.
Oh, wow.
And in OTF, this has been changed to in place of your normal card draw, of which you only get 1 per turn. And the original version was printed with in place of a card draw. And as I said, there are different ways to engineer additional card draws during your turn and just abuse the heck out of it.
Now, I'm trying to follow these rules here. I haven't played it in so long, but it says you may download. So in the original version of this, in place of a card draw, you may download. Weren't you only limited to 1 download a turn?
No.
Oh.
No. As
Okay,
long
then
as you can generate those downloads, you were free to use them.
Okay, then that does seem broken. Wow. Okay.
One of your Klingons from the Delta Quadrant.
So we did start to see the emergence of Klingons with the Delta icon, but not in any number to make them a viable Delta Quadrant exclusive faction.
There's the outpost. So we can play Hirogen now. Okay.
Yes, and this special downloads Hirogen Hunt, so you can set this up in the seed phase.
We got some nice Hirogen cards in this pack, eh? This isn't a bad pack to open if you're doing Hirogen.
Yep. Yeah, 1 more Hirogen common there. 2 Ranjan. Or uncommon?
It's common.
2 navigation. Better at flying the ship than anyone in DS9.
Then yeah, we have the 2 of these, 2 of those.
In defense of these doubles of the Vidians, there might be different guys who are just wearing the same face. So
I don't think they take kindly to that, Johannes.
I actually think that is one of the duplicate personas is the Sinaran card. I just can't remember which one he doubles with.
Thoughts on our pack, on our Borg pack, or Hirogen heavy Borg pack?
I think of these final 4 expansions, the Borg is still the most available because of what we've seen today as well. You know, most people would rather have Voyager than Borg, and then of our final 2 expansions, their value is way different. So I think you've had a fairly regular experience for opening a bag of Borg.
Agreed.
Any other thoughts on the Borg before we move on?
I think it's simply not an expansion that attracts a lot of players. Gameplay-wise, the Borg are very complex, though they make good villains. My experience is that people still prefer the First Contact Borg to the Voyager aesthetic of the Borg, and the Hirogen, well, they don't have the star power that you have from the that you know from the Federation factions or from a certain Klingons that were recurring characters, and Hirogen they suffer from the same thing as the Vidians and Kazon, that they don't have that much to work with. And in Germany, we had this problem with some of the Hirogen characters that there's a very prominent swastika in the background of one of the cards, or they were in the Nazi uniforms. And I know a lot of players didn't want to play with those cards or put something over it, marked it with a Sharpie or whatever. And I think the continuing committee is trying to create alternate image versions of these cards where they focus on close-ups, so you don't see any of those Nazi insignia, and players can actually play the game, because in Germany those things are actually unconstitutional symbols, and you're not supposed to show them in public, of course. So we don't really want to see them in a game that we play for fun.
It's very true in Britain as well. I used to make model airplanes as a kid, and when you couldn't get the swastika transfers to go on the airplanes because they were not allowed as well. So a similar thing in Britain.
Cool. I think Borg suffers from the same sort of syndrome as Rules of Acquisition. It was too faction-based of a faction that wasn't exciting to enough people.
Also, the dual affiliation cards, it seems like I love the Prometheus, but a lot of the others, it's a real chore to find. Like if I'm getting 2 Chakotys, I'm happy. Like if I'm getting 2 Kesses or 2 Neelixes, these are big characters. Like it's a pain and they're expensive, but I like having them. Searching out 2 Orums is not something, it's just something I have to do to complete the set. So it's definitely more of an obligation than a joy to pull those dual affiliations.
Yep. It's very season specific in Voyager, and you have to really like that episode or set of episodes to be interested in those particular duels.
Well, here we are at the end of the third of the Voyager set. To quote you, Dan, at the end of the Borg. Let's move on to our last 2 sets.